teach someone that way, it was just, I think this guy just did it to me to make me suffer. Because he would pull a slug. He was a great handle puller for one thing. He'd pull this wet slug, and then you'd cut it off, and immediately take that wet slug in your hand and try to jam that on the piece, which just squished it all together, and you had all these horrible marks on the piece. No one could learn. And then they started pulling, and it would be thin at that spot, and it would just pull off, and it was a nightmare. So I taught myself how to pull a handle. I never really looked at anyone else when I started doing porcelain. And you know, you're not going to use much clay to pull a handle. You don't need, you know, half as much as this. This would pull a handle that long. But you're going to roll it into a ball, tighten it up a little bit, and then just roll it into a carrot shape. And that's what you want to do. This already gives the student an idea that it starts thick and ends thinner. So you have this brush stroke. Once you get it like that, a little thicker at the top and at the end, then slam it down a couple of times. And then take your needle and cut it off at an angle. A little bit like that. This is still way too much clay. Now see, you can still handle this without worrying about screwing the doggone thing up. I'm going to push this to the outside a little bit. What you want is an oval. You never want something with a big tunnel drawn through it, because by the time you put those two sharp edges against your knuckle to lift that up, it's going to hurt. So an oval is the best thing, without any marks in it at all, any drag marks. You can put, well, we'll talk about that. Just water, where I've dug into that clay a little bit, just fresh water. No slip at all. Okay? Let that water dry a little bit. You don't want to stick it on when it's just glossy. Just rub that into the surface. No water on this part at all. And just attach it. At this point, you can still do just about anything you want with that handle without it being all juiced up. It'll stay up, it won't flop over on you. Take and smooth this in. I've never had one of these come off when I do it this way. You may get a slight drying crack on the top, but you just take a rounded tool like this and just push it in after it's dry if it happens. 9 times out of 10 it won't. I prefer a wider handle at the top than most people because it feels better on my hand. Sometimes people don't like the looks of that. So now you're ready to start pulling. You've got it all attached well. You know, that's very manual part of it. And then wet this down. This is a Japanese method, and it's called scissors. I was taught 2 ways in Japan. I was taught it's like, what was it called? The snake. It was a snake method because it was cobra. It was 1 thumb underneath, 2 fingers on the top, and you pulled it like that, and that gives you a really interesting handle, but not very comfortable. You really have to take your time with porcelain. If you start really dragging on it, it's just going to pull off. So it's just a slide from the top, putting more pressure to the bottom. You constantly go, it's called scissors because you're going back like this with 2 fingers, and you're going from each side, putting that clay in between the fat part of your thumb and forefinger. And that smooths that edge off. And in between that, you're making a mark with your fingers like this, up the side, so you get a thicker part in the center, which has your strength, but it's got that nice thin fold area on the outside. So it's a continuous pull. You should have a little softer clay maybe if you're having a hard time pulling that down. Like I said, that small amount of clay really pulls along the handle, much more than I need for this cup. This would be a 2-fingered cup. Oops. You don't want it too thin because the public, when they see something thin like that, think it's going to break off, although it's very strong. But thin enough to where it doesn't look like you put some big horseshoe on the the side of it. 2 or 3 more pulls. Okay. And then just turn it upside down, shake it a couple of times, attach it here. This is one shape you can wind up with. We've got a lot of extra stuff, so I'm going to really kind of just push that in gently and tear that off in kind of a circle. It's got a little extra right there. There's many different ways to attach this bottom. You know, the old way was to actually curl the clay up to have this really, that's really 60s stuff. But it had a purpose. That little curl that was sticking off was a nice fulcrum to your fingers. Now that's just a straightforward handle, but I'm going to change that handle to more updated shape. And it seems like I'm spending a long time on these, but I really don't make that many mugs, and I enjoy pulling the handle. So I'm going to lift this up. Just get underneath it with my finger and lift it up, which changes the whole shape of that handle. It almost squares it up. That's a nicer shape for me, instead of just coming right off. It kind of has this straight up, so you can get your finger in, but it gives it a little length. And the Japanese have this idea that they want you to see how things work. They want you to see how things were attached, what's done to it. So even though they pull this really nice handle, they'll put a line, which I always did. I like the idea of that, around this thing, around the whole handle, so it appears to be separate. And from the side, it's really a nice little shadow. And there's 2 purposes for this. One is it actually makes it stronger, because the glaze will fill in a little bit there. And then you dry this area off. I'll put a stamp just to give it a little bit of character. And that really attaches it. So it's got just that little circular stamp. That's sort of my mark. Now, the secret is this porcelain's so damn glassy that you're going to have to oval this. This is getting pretty hard. The opposite way, just a little bit. But so you're ovaling it the opposite way of the handle. So when it comes out of the kiln, it'll be straight. Because it'll suck in that top just about that much. It's not much. But have you ever had something come out that was oval this way with a handle? You know, it's not too attractive. Okay? So, you know, real simple, nice handle.